What's going on YouTube? Today we're going to avoid talking about technique, lighting, and workflow, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit of a story. A story about my relationship with mirrorless cameras. I started in the digital era, never working with film, and since I've been in photography, I've been using Nikon DSLR cameras. But ever since way back when the Sony A6000 came out, I've been watching mirrorless cameras and the technology evolve. I've thought all along that eventually the technology is going to get to a point where all photographers are going to switch to mirrorless cameras. My first mirrorless camera was a Fuji X-E1, and I got it back in 2014. And it didn't take me very long to realize that I just wasn't impressed with it yet. I didn't think the technology was there. I played with like the X Pro and a few other Fuji cameras, but I just wasn't impressed with the files, the handling, the performance of the camera. So I quickly just realized that it wasn't there yet. I'm going to try and wait a little bit longer and see if something better comes out. So last year in 2015, I hadn't had a mirrorless camera for about a whole year, and I was going with my wife to celebrate our anniversary in New York. Whenever I travel with my wife, I try to not make the focus about photography. But when you're going to someplace like New York, you still want to have a capable camera. So I was actually going through Best Buy and found an open box deal on a Sony A6000. I looked up the specs, I was impressed with it, and I ended up purchasing it. And then over the course of the trip to New York and then using it afterwards, I absolutely fell in love with that camera. It was responsive, it produced great images, and it had a ton of features that were crazy for such a tiny body. The only thing I didn't really like was Sony's selection of lenses at the time. Anything really nice and high quality was built for full frame, and therefore you didn't get any size benefit. By the time you put that gigantic lens on the tiny A6000 body, you were left with pretty much the same weight as a DSLR. About a month after returning from New York, I was faced with a really tough choice. A friend of mine named Chad invited me to go to Hong Kong and Vietnam with him. This would be my first trip to Asia, and I knew I had to have a capable camera system with me, although I didn't want to bring my Nikon gear because it was just too bulky. At the time, Chad was well invested in the Olympus OMD Micro Four Thirds system, and he had a majority of the lenses that were actually produced for the system. He said that if I just bought an Olympus OMD body, then we could just split all of his lenses between both of our packs and then have access and share all of them throughout the trip. I took the leap and I bought the EM5 Mark II right around the time that it was released. The camera handled great throughout the trip, and it had awesome features for landscape photography, like the long exposure preview and the wireless control, things that really lend themselves to landscape photography. We had a phenomenal time on our trip, and the weight was a huge lifesaver. I mean, if I would have had like even 3 or 4 Nikon lenses in my pack with one body, it just would have been a much more difficult trip because we were doing lots of hiking and rock climbing. And the whole landscape over there is rugged and free to explore, and we definitely had a huge benefit by bringing that Olympus system and allowing us to just hike longer and further and not have the strain of a huge DSLR system on our back all day. While we got some great images, ultimately when I came home I was disappointed with the files. The quality just wasn't what I was accustomed to with Nikon cameras, and a lot of my images would have benefited from just having that one extra stop of dynamic range in the images. I knew that Olympus still wasn't ready for my professional work, and really at the time I still hadn't found a system that I felt could replace my Nikon gear. Now, almost another year later, my career is still changing, and my needs for a camera system is constantly changing. For those that don't know, I do weddings primarily. That's kind of my weekly grind. And on top of that, I do a little bit of commercial work, everything from our local roofing company to major corporations like Nike. Nikon has served me well, but my needs are constantly shifting. I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel further. I've been doing a lot more video work for my commercial clients. Lastly, I got a lot of great vacations planned that I'm gonna need a smaller, more compact system for. I'll be going to Europe in just a couple weeks. I'm going to Asia again in 2017. Quite a few flights planned across the US, and I just want a system that I'm not gonna be tied to a gigantic bag like my LowPro 300 with my Nikon setup. Now, I truly want to just use one camera system. I feel like you're just way more in tune. Obviously with videography, I'm going to have to rent sometimes because I don't really think you can ever have a system that's going to satisfy what everybody is looking for, even if they're looking for your direction. But I'd love to just have one camera system that can go with me on the travels, that can keep up with my wedding and commercial work, that can do some good video that I can use for the YouTube channel. And with Nikon, that's just really not cutting it. I've found I've had to have some type of smaller camera to go on vacation with. I've had to rent up for video gear and work with Sony equipment. It just hasn't worked to cover everything. So at this point, I'm faced with a decision of investing in a second and third system to kind of cover everything that I need, or find something out there that is going to work with everything. Now, I've been watching Sony all year, and I thought that I was going to be investing in Sony, but without the dual card slots, and really the system isn't any smaller by the time you get the big lenses on there, that's not going to work for me. And then the Micro Four Thirds systems, the quality just isn't there yet for what I need for my photo work. I do think it's there for video, and there are some new releases that I think are going to boost the quality and improve it a bit, but ultimately it's not going to satisfy all my needs. But I think there may be something out there that is going to do all the jobs. I'm hoping that what's in these boxes is going to be everything that I need. And I want to invite you guys to kind of watch me and see if this is going to work out and how I feel about this system. So I'm going to follow this up with a massive unboxing of all of this gear that you see here and show you guys what I got and why I think it's going to work for me. But first, I just wanted you to understand what I'm looking for and kind of my story so that you have an idea of why I actually made this jump altogether. So thank you so much for watching. Can't wait for you guys to see this unboxing video. I'll see you next time, YouTube.